Do you know, it took me ages to figure out where he actually said that from, and now I know exactly which Hall of Fame it was.
And was that at the Hall of Fame? Was that? I thought that was on Tough Enough or something. Did it say Hall of Fame speech?
It said Hall of Fame at bottom.
Oh, I missed that bit. Okay, which one was it?
2019 with DX getting inducted.
Yeah.
It's kind of true, though, when you think about it. Do you know what I mean? In wrestling terminology.
It's very much like something Sly Stallone would say in a Rocky film.
Which Rocky was the first one? Oh, sorry, it kind of went a bit glitchy then.
It went a bit glitchy there. Oh, heck.
I said which Rocky film?
All of them.
Yeah. Straight to the point. Stevie, it's weird when we think of What Culture, because every single time I speak to somebody, whether it's a wrestling fan, a wrestler themselves, What Culture always gets brought up weirdly. It's crazy to think that a company 3-year-old had such an impact on people.
Yeah, and obviously we'll get into that today. There's lots of reasons for that, but it was, as I said to you, you know, it feels like a bit of a blur to me now. But hopefully you can refresh my memory with some of the research that you've done, because heck, when was it? What, 8 years ago? 9 years ago? Coming up 9 years? It's crazy, yeah.
2016.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird, because I think Wcpw was 5 years before that, so there's like a bit of a gap there.
In closing, you mean?
Yeah, because 2011, I think Rod closed it 2011, and obviously 5 years later, obviously What Culture was born.
Everything had changed, you know, the landscape, the whole landscape of wrestling had changed then, and obviously you had your Progresses and ICW, and you know, they weren't on the map when, you know, the original incarnation, let's say, of Wcpw closed. So everything changed in the 2010s, as they're calling them now.
Interesting. But of course, before we do that, we're going to play your favorite bit, which is the intro. It's still exactly the same. Here we go. You know, it's crazy. Everyone still likes that intro.
It's because it's 3D. That'll never go away. I don't know. I think there was a point where it was kind of seen as cliche, and it's like everything's using CG now. So let's go back and keep it a bit more two-dimensional, you know, in terms of effects and graphics. I don't know if you've noticed that, but if you go back further, 80s and 90s in the infancy, people would really show off with the graphical effects if they could do them. So that's what it is, you see. We need more 3D logos and things.
Yeah, do you think, like, I think WWE now overdoes their like intros and stuff like that? I don't like them, to be honest.
They don't have a simple ring like that though, just spinning around. That's all you need.
Exactly, and stuff like that. Stevie, it's always a pleasure to have you, man. I mean, have you been since we last spoke?
I've been pretty good, yeah. You know, I don't know how long it's been. I think we did probably a wrestling in Newcastle show, did we? The last time I was on, whenever that was, January maybe, or you know better than me. I can't remember.
It was just after Grand Slam.
Things are good. Just after Grand Slam, there you go. So things have been good, yeah. I'm just really aware of the world right now. That's where I'm at. I mean, I was at Subways earlier. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about them, but it's not just Subways, but you go into these sort of fast food places and they make you use the video screens, you know, to put your order in, and they won't even speak to you now. It feels like, you know, you have to either tell you when you go over to the sort of customer service, go over there, put your order in, and it's like, what happened? Because you just round the corner from me here, there was a Subway, and the girl always knew my order, and she give me tips about, oh, this has just come in, try this. Oh, was it nice? And I just think we're, you know, it's just really cold today when I went, in terms of, I don't mean physically, you know what I mean? It's just very, we don't want to lose our humanity. That's what I'm concerned about, Liam. I'm getting all I don't want to get conspiracy theory or saying AI is going to take over, but AI's taken over already, as you know. So
Exactly. I mean, let's talk about obviously wrestling in Newcastle, because you've probably seen we've done a lot of content, like I said, watch-alongs. I gave Haney the task of obviously researching it, knowing nothing about the promotion. What do you think from what you've watched?
It's great. I mean, you know, I always love, as I said to you before we went on air. I think, you know, getting that reaction from fans who haven't seen it, you know, people who aren't going out watching every indie promotion because it's so easy to watch now. And obviously we'll get onto that with the subject matter today, just how much things have changed in the last, you know, 5 years or whatever it's been. But the fact that you can watch the full events on YouTube, Benji's obviously a big fan of that, as you've heard from him before, and it's great getting that reaction. And you know, on one hand, it's easy to sort of lean on the negative and just sort of sigh when someone says, "Oh, I don't know who Brady Phillips is, I don't know who Dean Allmark is," but then, you know, for them to see the match and then realize who they are and how good they are, I think it's only a positive. So we just need to, you know, people maybe on the British scene need to, you know, pull the head out of the backside, so to speak, and realize that not everybody's familiar with the boys, but once they will be, they'll be over. So it's a really cool thing what you're doing.
Absolutely. And like I said, we will be dropping Henry Faust and Ian Skinner match this week as well, because that's one of my favorites and stuff. But yeah, we're also doing the watch along for Bulletproof, so a lot more content. And it's really, it's like you mentioned there, James obviously wanted to learn about the UK scene, a little backstory to this. And I thought, what match can I present him first? And I remember what you said about Dean Allmark and Brady Phillips.
Yeah.
I'm like, boom, here we go. That's your first match. I'm not going to tell you any context about it. And then there you go.
Because that's the kind of match as well that doesn't need a backstory. You know, I'm a big fan of matches having backstories. Obviously, that's a different subject matter entirely. Of, you know, how much you can enjoy a wrestling match without a backstory. But I think a match like that, you know, the way it's presented, you know, it's a family event. It's for kids to enjoy. But also, if you want, you know, the storylines and you want the backstory as well, you can get that from, you know, what wrestling in Newcastle are doing. You can come in cold, watch one event, get into it. But if you follow it, you know, bonus. So I think that's a good thing. Yeah.
There you go. So obviously today's subject matter is obviously What Culture Pro Wrestling. So let's obviously start at the beginning, Stevie. How did it all come about where you obviously heard about What Culture?
Okay. So I expected this. So basically, a friend told me about this the other week because I couldn't fully remember the specifics. But he had become involved behind the scenes with What Culture. Of course, everybody watching, I'm going to assume that knows what Culture is, and the fact that you know, they're a YouTube channel. Obviously at the time we're covering WWE, lots of other pop culture stuff as well, right? So I was unfamiliar with them. Might have seen the name, might have seen the logo, and I was at an event, and he was telling me what he was doing. You know, he'd been involved with doing some of the videos, and mentioned, you know, the guys that were there at the time, many of which are now with that started Cultaholic, a lot of those personalities. So it was like Adam Pacitti and Adam Blampier and King Ross and Jack the Jobber. And I'm going to miss someone, and I'm sorry because there was a lot of them.
Simon Miller.
Simon Miller, of course, Simon Miller, yeah. So he was involved in that, and I don't know who it was because I've spoken actually the last few days. I did get talking to a few people from the time who first came up with the idea of doing essentially a wrestling promotion using What Culture's facilities and having What Culture run it, because they had you know, such a big production team. Or if they didn't have a big production team, they had the know-how, they had the money, they had the know-how. And someone had suggested, why don't you just run pro wrestling company yourself, because you can afford this and it's going to look slick and it's going to look great, and you've got the YouTube channel. It's going to be tremendous. And it was told to me like that, and as I say, I spoke to a friend the other week, and he was saying, "You absolutely shut it down." and I'm trying to think now where my mind was at the time. So it was at a 3CW event, I believe, when we were talking afterwards, and I think I was just sick of the amount of companies in this country. It's not that I was looking for more work, because anyone that wanted to book me, I would have taken it. This is 2016 sort of time. But it was like, we don't need this. We don't need more. It's oversaturated. There's too much. I was completely unaware and ignorant to the world that What Culture had created. You know, it's like now you look at how much an entire generation, maybe multiple generations now, Liam, have been influenced, that they don't know anything else other than YouTube, and they have their favorite influences and they watch the favorite channels, and they become so engrossed with What Culture. They knew all the personalities. They were celebrities to them, which blew my mind when I found that out. But by the same token, I think those guys were ignorant to indie wrestling as well. So, but this is a good thing, because this is a huge audience that's watching What Culture now, that doesn't know anything outside of WWE, really. I mean, this is before, this is pre-AEW. Probably knew a bit about TNA. Don't know how many of them watched it. Knew little bits about, maybe New Japan and what was happening at that time. But for the most part, I would, just throwing a percentage out there, and it's probably not accurate, but 98% of that audience, I would have said, would hardcore WWE fans, wanted the opinion of What Culture guys. And now we can present a wrestling company to them. It's a pretty cool idea, isn't it? If you think about it, know how they've got the production. Let's do tapings. Let's do eventually, internet pay-per-views. And it's like this can't fail, surely. You would think, because there's no alternative. There's nothing on television. And it was just, the world was a little bit different to now, because now obviously you can access any wrestling promotion in the world and everybody's doing it, and we'll talk a bit about that later. But they had the production, they had the facilities, and they just needed to get involved with some people from the actual wrestling scene that knew what they were doing in the wrestling aspect, put them with the production guys from What Culture, and as I say, it's surely a surefire winner.
Yeah, absolutely. If I remember rightly, I think you've told me this story before. Didn't they do their pay-per-views live?
They did. Nobody was doing this. Again, they've tapped into this audience that would never have attended indie wrestling, but they like What Culture. So, here's another wrestling company, and they come along. They've got the know-how. They've got the, I've seen it. I watched them do it, and I'm not going to say it was a multi-million-dollar, warehouse facility, whatever you want to call it, but they knew what they were doing. I watched them do it. I was watching somebody edit the pay-per-view as it was going out live backstage, because what I used to do, and we can get onto that, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but after each match, I tended to go either backstage or near the sound position. It was like a little bit, I suppose, like guerrilla, where the stage was, I suppose you would call it. And sometimes there was a guy there on the laptop, and he's got a headset on, and he's talking to you can communicate with the commentators and the camera people, and he knows what's coming next. And I watched him produce the end and go out live, and it was amazing, because it's like, this is what I love about wrestling. This is, for lack of a term, this is proper wrestling. This is the way it should be. It should be a television production, and it's being filmed, it's going out. And it was just an awesome thing to be a part of, and they did. Nobody else was doing this, and probably a few American companies were trying it at the time through like Fight TV, as it's called, that's Thriller now, isn't it?
Yes.
Is that right? I get confused now because there's a few, but yeah. So that these are the only guys in town trying something like this, and it's like, it's amazing. But when I first, to go back, and I'm sure we'll get onto it, and I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I just thought I just wasn't that interested. because I thought, oh, this sounds like a disaster. For some reason in my head, I pictured, because they did the first tape, and like I say, we can get onto that if you want, but it was in a warehouse, and it was just like, for some reason, I had in my head sort of old, early 80s sort of Memphis look. And, you know, I'm not dissing Memphis because it was what it was at the time, but it just, you know, dreary, smoky. They're sadly weren't going to be there. It's going to be rubbish. Nobody wants an hour wrestling program, you know, with menial talent. And of course, it wasn't quite that at all.
Not at all. So obviously you've been in wrestling for quite a long time. You've obviously seen a lot of backstage culture and stuff like that. Was this like the same thing, or was it a whole lot different?
It was very different because, as I said, that they were two different worlds colliding. When we did the first taping, which I did not ring announce for, and there were reasons for that. Most notably, I was elsewhere that evening, but I was backstage, and I did do some backstage promos because they were taping, you know, television. They're taping the episodes to go out on YouTube week by week. I don't know how many it was in that first tape, and you might have the details there. Probably 4 episodes, 4 to 6 episodes, whatever it was. It was quite a lot, and it was two different worlds in both the fans and the wrestlers, and obviously the personalities from What Culture who were there. And earlier in the day, I remember I seen all the boys, and they, you know, most of them knew me, and I knew them. I'm like, how's it going? How's it going? How's it going? Blah blah blah. You know, it's you know, you mentioned. I don't know if it was before we were on the air, but oh, did you see that sun then? I've just been blinded. Sorry about that. I remember like seeing Jay Lethal, and I hadn't seen him for a while, and talking to Jay and stuff. And I think it was, and hopefully he doesn't mind me saying it, I haven't seen it for a long time. I think it was Adam Blampier who I just met that day, and he's like, he thought, oh, it's really cool the way you interact, you know, with the wrestlers, and they seem to know who you are, and you know who they are. And I was like, yeah, this is it. And I think they were a bit starstruck. You know, because you did have the sort of American names there, you know, the indie guys that were on that first event, but even with the British guys, I think they were just a bit unsure and like, oh, are we? I mean, I speak to them, you know, just a bit. Oh heck, you know, we're just behind the camera, and now we're out here and meeting these people, and it's a bit intimidating, and there was things that they didn't know. And I remember there was a couple of things. I remember getting annoyed at one point, just because of how someone was acting around, you know, the wrestling lot and myself. But it was just like, but everyone was on the same side though. We're gonna try and make this work. And as I say, same with the fans. They weren't the people going to NGW or, you know, All Star or anything, you know, or even anywhere in the Northeast. They were fans of What Culture. I spoke to a kid outside, and I say kid, young teenage lad, and he was there before anyone. And I got talking to him, and I'm like, okay, so this What Culture thing, you know, tell me about it. And he was talking about, I don't know who it was. I might have got this wrong. It was either Pacitti or Blampier had done a video where they were talking about how they would turn John Cena heel. And the kid like, oh, that sounds a bit weird. And then by the end, I was like, oh, that's really awesome. That's really cool. And he explained it all to me, laid it out. And I just shut it down in flames and I went, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. I said, that's terrible. You know? And I explained to him why. And I says, well, first of all, merchandise and blah, blah, blah. And now if he'd have said in 2025, it would have been fine. But the point is, yeah, it was just a different world. But we were all determined to make it work.
Yeah, I'm just looking obviously at the events from obviously the first year, and obviously Loaded was obviously one of their big things. I want to talk about Loaded the number 12 because that's got the worst rating apparently, and it's weird because the main event is, just make sure I get the right one.
What's this on, Cage Match or something?
Yes, WCPW Loaded 12. El Ligero defeats El Belter, El Ligero and El Patron and Travis Banks. That's the main event, but apparently that's the worst rated one.
Well, it was a triple threat with Alberto and Travis Banks as well.
Yes. Give me a second. I can show you the screen.
Hmm.
There we go. That's the worst raid one, apparently.
I wonder why. I mean, don't expect me to remember all this. Let's see. When was this taped? Newcastle.
Even Jim Cornette's on commentary.
Yeah, I think this was either taped before the pay-per-view or the day after. Because it'll have been the day after, I believe, with Corny and JR being there, because they were brought in for the pay-per-view. I don't know. You would have to watch that episode.
Yeah, I think are they all still on
know.
YouTube to watch? I can't remember.
I don't know if they're still on there. You would have to check. It comes up sometimes, some matches, but I don't know if that's official or anything, or someone's just ripped it off. But yeah, they taped a lot of TV. Just briefly about that. I mean, I've always thought that wrestling should be. It's like to go in parallel with like what, if you remember what 5 Star Wrestling tried to do. They had the TV deal with one of the Sky channels, and I thought it was insane. And it was insane because it didn't last 2 minutes and it cost them, an arm and a leg. And no disrespect to them because I don't really know them, but it was just a bit ridiculous, I thought. And they had like 3 hours a week, and they went out live, and it's like, what are you doing? What Culture, they taped the episodes, so many episodes in one evening, and these episodes ran, an hour or less. I mean, a few maybe might have went over, but to build to the pay-per-view. And I've always thought that, the traditional way of doing wrestling, and what I always wanted to do, and to see someone doing that in this country, I thought was just awesome. It was old school, and it was right. And you're building to a pay-per-view, and it's going out, and there's events going out live, and you've got the taped events, and you can buy pay-per-views and all that kind of stuff. I just think it was just cool, so cool at the time. And even now you've got so many companies in this country doing the same thing. Not they don't have the TV show though week by week, but they're all trying to do pay-per-views. Some of them trying to go out live and on YouTube, and I've seen a few of them, and it just looks bad to me. It's like, if you can't do it, if you don't have the production, you don't have the facilities, don't do it. The one thing What Culture had, they had that production, and it looked good. It still looks pretty good, I think. And they tapped into an audience, and that's another thing. If I don't get to say it later, Liam, let's not forget this. They didn't put out a single poster. They didn't put out any flyers. It was a built-in audience of fans who'd been watching, their favorite YouTubers, Pachiti, Blampier, King Ross, whoever it was. And now they were telling them, come to What Culture Pro Wrestling, and they did. And it worked. Now imagine if they'd have put out posters and stuff as well. Well, we could have been, and maybe down the line, if things had worked out, it would have been, big arenas, and they'd have been full, unlike, the people who've tried it and they've failed. So it was the fact that they had the platform. They had the platform before they had the promotion, which I think is really interesting. That was the advantage, whereas so many places start with the promotion first and work their way up, So.
And that just shows how popular, obviously, they were on the internet as well. Because obviously, we know now, Stevie, as wrestling fans, internet's obviously key when it comes to wrestling.
Well, I mean, it was then, but it was the whole YouTube thing. It was the whole because I didn't understand it, and I must confess, even though I write for Inside the Ropes magazine. There's a little plug. A lot of these social media companies, and they've got the links to YouTube, and they do the videos, and you've got your What Cultures and your Cultaholic, and Inside the Ropes put videos out too, and these ones where you've got an actual person talking and giving, this happened on Raw, and they've got an audience for those people. They've got fans of those people, and I just did not know it existed. And I think a lot of the wrestlers involved were completely unaware as well. Because to me, it's like, well, they're getting all their information from the Observer. Why don't the fans just subscribe to that? I didn't understand it, It's like, or PW Torch or whoever, But they were getting the information from YouTube videos because, yeah, like I said, that they were brought up with that, much like we were brought up with television. There's an entire generation brought up with YouTube. It's a bit it's a bit crazy to me, and this is where the I don't know what you think of that. I don't know if you've got your own favorite influences and things, Liam, and how you get your news, and it's just a whole new world that I just didn't realize the power of it. I thought YouTube was just for crazy cat videos. I did like the Angry Video Game Nerd when he started and stuff. Like a lot of people did. He was one of the first sort of big influencers, but that was the advantage they had, and it was an important one.
I want to talk obviously about the UK talent we see today, because every single one I can think of went through What Culture at some point. I'm talking Connors, I'm talking Kirby, I'm talking Lizzie, Rampage, Cruz. The list is endless. Do you know what I mean? How impactful they are, do you know, for like people we see today?
Yeah, I mean, they wanted the best guys, and whoever came up with that initial roster and added to it, it was, there was a group of people, and they were looking at the best people in the country. Obviously, they were bringing in names from America, independent names as well, and Japan actually as well, and from all over the world. I mean, you had Walter there, and like I said, your Lethals and Moose, a lot of the TNA guys and stuff, and Bully Ray was there, and Matt Hardy and stuff like that. So, but yeah, those names you mentioned, I mean, they were on the radar of the people that were helping the What Culture guys.
Even when I'm researching wrestlers, I always see What Culture. I mean, even Lana Austin as well. Even I completely forgot about.
Oh, don't forget Lana; she'll go mad.
Yeah, she'll probably batter me. Let's be honest. Yeah. So obviously promotion comes. Obviously things go wrong. Now a lot of research, a lot of videos and stuff like that. And one of the key things apparently what Culture struggled with was the demonetization thing. What do you remember about that?
I just remember thinking that was it. That it was over, because that's where they were getting the revenue, and they tapped into something and done something that nobody else had, and it was a big advantage. And it was like, look, we can run. This is the wrestling company that's on YouTube, like the only one. Do you know what I mean? It's like this is it. This is the live wrestling show on YouTube, and we've got internet pay-per-views. Yeah, but we need that. However it works, with the advertisers and stuff. And I think that it was a decision because of the violence, and pro wrestling was grouped in with all that. And you'll see, I think I linked you the other day, Liam, about the speech that Adam Blampier did on one of those events where he's in the ring, and he's given the speech about they had a petition or something to try and stop the monetization, or however that works. I'm not really money minded when it comes to how YouTube works, because I don't quite understand it and how people make anything off. I think it takes a lot of work, and when you lose that, it did affect the company in a big way, because that revenue's not coming in. Even though they've got the backing, they've got everything behind What Culture, they need that money coming in still.
I remember the video, which was, I think he showed the thing where were 1 million views, and it was like $43 they got, which is, for a wrestling promotion thing, it's not the best. Let's be honest.
It's not good for anybody, is it? It's not. It's not worth it. I mean, again, I'm going back to it, the subject, because I think it's relevant in this case. But the whole thing of, being a YouTuber, and kids now, I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be an influencer, whatever the term is these days. The amount of effort that you've got to put in just to get that money. I mean, it's bad enough being being a musician. That's always in the news now. You've got these big rock stars and pop stars and stuff saying how much they get from you know, a billion downloads on one of the streaming services, and it's nowhere near what they should be getting. But yeah, I mean, that doesn't shock me that they had that many views, and again, it's dependent, I think, on advertising and whatnot, and to lose that, it kind of kills it. I thought it was over, to be honest.
Yeah. The other thing as well, which I mean, I don't know the details of this. I can't find research on it. Is all the guys obviously like basically leave? You know, obviously Adam, King Ross, they all obviously leave to obviously to form Cultaholic. Do you
Yeah.
remember anything about that?
Yeah, I do, and it was to do with, you know, behind the scenes and a person that they didn't particularly like, and they felt like they could be getting, you know, they would have more worth on their own. So that's what they did. They just got up and left, and you would have to speak to them, but from what I understood, and I could have just one side of the story, it was to do with an internal struggle.
Okay, that's fair. The other thing as well, the other two I remember is NXT UK. I think that was on the rise, or it just started up.
Yeah, I remember getting that phone call, and I remember where I was, and it's someone who I know, who at the time was quite heavily involved with business and stuff, and I get the phone call, and it's like, you won't believe what they're going to do. And I'm like, okay, here we go. So WE, yeah, they weren't happy about What Culture Pro Wrestling. They particularly weren't happy with the news that got back to them that World of Sport was coming back, and somebody found out how many potential viewers ITV could have. So they kickstarted their plans. I'm not saying it wasn't ever going to happen, because it was, because it's been talked about for years, and I think I might have mentioned this on another show, because I was tipped off about WWE Europe or WWE UK, you know, nearly 20 years ago now, that it was always in the back of, you know, the company's mind, or Vince McMahon's mind, or whomever. So, but as soon as they found out, from what I understood about, and they can say it was a coincidence, or they can say it was always going to be, but it just, I don't know, it just seems a bit suspicious to find out about World of Sport and what they're not happy with What Culture, and then all of a sudden here comes NXT UK. It's a bit suspicious, and it's funny because I saw after it had debuted and everything, there was fans, you know, online saying things like, "Oh, look at ITV doing this to try and compete with." Well, no, they were going to do it. They had the plans to start first, and I don't care what WWE say or whomever there says. But again, that was another day where in the back of my mind, like, it's over. They're going to kill us. And some people are like, oh, we've heard the naysayers. They're saying it's going to wreck the UK scene. Well, honestly, Liam, and you can answer this question, has the UK scene recovered since NXT UK? I mean,
absolutely.
But they gutted it. They gutted us. And it wasn't good.
What can you say? I mean, it was weird.
I mean, to go, if you want me to talk a bit more about that, because we did have. I'll tell you this, because Joseph Connors obviously had signed, but they were like, oh yeah, he can appear, you know, this date and do this and XYZ and stuff. Same with I remember when Drew re-signed. So Drew Galloway, or Drew McIntyre, as he's better known, yeah. He has obviously already been to WWE, so he's in What Culture. He's one of the biggest stars. He becomes their champion, and then there he is appearing that WrestleMania weekend, whichever one it was, in the crowd at the NXT event, and it's like, he's re-signed, and I know Drew had apologized to the company. He said, sorry, I had to sign this, but I will be there at the next event. And he was at the No Regrets Rumble. He put the belt up in a Rumble match that was won by Martin Kirby. And yeah, that was a really cool moment. So he'd re-signed, but he was still there. And Drew's great, by the way. Known him for 20 years, on and off, and he's such a good guy, and he was so good to What Culture, and he was so important to it. I think worth mentioning Drew, but yeah, can't blame him for re-signing, can you? Really? I mean,
Not really, no.
people
And
need to look after themselves.
exactly. The other thing, obviously, which people say obviously killed What Culture was the name change. I'm not against name changes, but sometimes is it for the better?
That had to happen again. It was internal, and they had an agreement where it was basically, you know, one person against the other saying, if we're going to continue, you need to change the name. If I'm not going to be involved, you need to change the name. There were also, and again, I can be corrected on this because my memory is not as good as it was. I remember speaking to one of the owners and other people who were involved sort of on the creative side. They were talking about, we need to move away from it being attached to What Culture, because it was too attached to the fact that they were a sort of independent, how would you put it, that they did the reviews, they were critics, they had their own thing, and I think they were just trying to separate a bit, even though it was still What Culture. It was its own entity, if that makes sense. That's where that came from. And also there might be other avenues that, you know, they might be able to sell this as a television show to another company, is what the discussion was about, I think, as well. You couldn't sell, let's just say, for argument's sake, Sky TV come along, they're not going to buy something called What Culture Pro Wrestling. Do you see what I mean? And it's like they were trying to get away from that, and they were trying to get into a different kind of branding. But I don't think, again, I'm not avoiding the question, but I mean, I think you can see from the cards that I don't think the investment was quite as high with Defiance, but it was more focus on the homegrown talent, which is sometimes a good thing in the long term. Now, unfortunately, it didn't last as long as we were hoping, but had it been so, you know, it might have been that here in 2025 we might be talking about how successful Defiant was and how it grew its own talent, and What Culture Pro Wrestling was more like an attraction, you know, bringing in the top stars and doing things that way. So that was how I understood it anyway.
You can mention it obviously a few times, stuff like that, you're saying that's it, that we're done. What was the actual point where you obviously categorically knew this is it?
Where I was right.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever was. The last event that we did, the last pay-per-view, if I don't know if you've got the details of it there.
I can get it up 2 seconds for you.
Remind me of the ins and outs. Like I say, the whole thing feels like a blur to me because.
Give me a minute. This is why I like obviously two screens now. Right. So 29th is 620. Built to Destroy.
Built to Destroy.
Give me a second. I'll put it up on
screen. 2018, right?
19.
19. Sorry.
Right. There you go. It's on screen.
Let's have a look at this one. Sort of. Yeah. So if you go to the end, scroll down. Let's have a look. Right. Yeah. So when David Starr defeated Rampage, they played like a montage video on the screen of all the champions in What Culture's brief history, and it was like a bookend. You know, it was like the last. It was almost like the last chapter, and there's sort of murmurs in the crowd afterwards, saying, "I wonder if they've done that because they know that's it." I didn't know for sure if it was the end, if I'm honest, because I remember speaking to the guys afterwards, and it was kind of like, "Oh, if this is the end, we've said it is, and if it isn't, it's not." You know what I mean? It's just the end of like this season, and obviously we'll come back next year and rethink everything, because they did want a break, and then what happened is they showed this whole event on YouTube, and the idea was, if it gets so many viewers, they'll continue, because this was pay-per-view at first that went out live, and then they give it away for free later on YouTube. And unfortunately, it was like I say, the people behind the scenes, the owners of the company, were just like, okay, we're just going to cut our losses. That was the last one. Now we're done now. So,
I mean, when you look at that card, though, in the context of today, that is a pretty good card.
Yeah, I'm trying to jog my memory, because I think this was the one. I'm fairly sure this was the one where I'd gone out at the start, and Lionheart passed, and I had to open the event with sort of tribute, which is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And then we go from there with the event. But a lot of the names, yeah, I mean, you go up and down the card, card after card with What Culture. A lot of the guys are in WWE now, or they're in AEW, or you know, there's some great. We haven't really spoke about that, but some amazing matches. I mean, just from a name point of view, and even then, you know, more so that the actual quality of the in-ring was very high overall. Maybe not on the weekly events. You know, the weekly events were there to obviously promote their bigger events, but now and again, you know, they'd put a great match out, and I just remember being there for the likes of one that sticks out in my mind in Newcastle was when they did Drew against Will Ospreay. Now you say that today, it's kind of like a dream match, isn't it? But it was then to a lot of fans as well, and it was just so good, and it's like, man. But there was a lot of that.
It definitely was. So I was looking through Reddit and stuff like that, and I found a post which somebody picked out some of their favorite moments. So I'm going to see how many you actually remember.
Oh, okay, that's fun.
There you go. It's on screen.
I can't see that for the life of me.
So I'll read them out.
Yeah, read them out.
Adam Pacitti introduces What Culture.
Okay.
ROH champion Jay Leafy versus El Ligero, which we spoke about.
I don't know if I was there for that. Was that an early one?
He doesn't say. Just basically says.
I can't remember off the top of my head that one. But I'm sure it would have been great. I'm sure I've seen that match. Yeah.
Yeah. Joe Coffey versus Primate. Two big beefy boys kicking the shit out of each other. That's exactly how he's worded it.
Yeah. No, I can see. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
I'll send you this so you can have a quick read after. Eric Bischoff and Adam Blompier square off.
I missed that taping, unfortunately. So I've never met Eric. But I have seen the footage. Yeah.
The Kurt Angle Invitational Rumble. That kind of interested me a little bit, that one.
Yeah, so this was for Refuse to Lose, which was the first pay-per-view event. That was where they brought in Jim Ross and Jim Cornette to do commentary, and I remember that day well. So this was to face Kurt Angle. Joe Hendry eventually faced Kurt Angle. That was a surreal day in itself. Refuse to Lose. We're going out live. We're doing a pay-per-view, and I got the jitters, man. And it was me and SoCal Val actually doing joint ring announcing, which is always fun. I love that. I love the dynamic of having two ring announcers, and she do one match and then I do the next one, and then but she give me the main events, both main events. So we had the title match, which was Joseph Connors and Martin Kirby. And I just remember the reaction in the building, and I think I've talked about this to yourself before. You know, just the fact that we're going out live, so I've got the jitters, and Doug Williams just says to me, you know, it's just another show, Steve. It's just another. Don't worry about it. You know, in fact, you're going out live, and it's like, oh, it's so cool though. So that's when I came up with my whole unique spiel, because it was in ring intros, and I've got, you know, Jim Cornette saying to me, he says, "Oh, when we're not talking, because you won't have the headset, I'll just point when we're done." And I'm like, man, I've had this dream, you know, and I did. It's a true story, you know. I was ring announcing on Raw, and for some reason it wasn't Jerry Lawler, it was Jim Cornette with Jim Ross, and he pointed to me, and I'm like, Jim, I've had this dream, and it happened in real life, and it was so cool. So when he went like that, I turned to the crowd, and I just came up with this whole thing of, "We are live." Well, first of all, it was Newcastle upon Tyne. That's right. So Newcastle, we are live all over the world for this, the WCPW championship match, and then the pop, and that became a sort of thing when we went out live. I would say, wherever it was, Manchester or Leeds or Newcastle, we are live. But I just remember Kirby turning to me because, it wasn't the Northumbria University, that room. And I've seen a lot of bands there now, but it's not that big. But it was full, and it looks cool. If you watch the matches on YouTube, I'm sure Joe Hendry versus Kurt Angle's on there. It was just full, and it was just packed, and we were going out live, and it was just an atmosphere. And when Kirby made his entrance, and he was getting over big as like a big baby face, none of them knew who he was before that. And he just turned to me, and went, "It's all right, this Steve, isn't it?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because I remember Kirby before he was a fan when he first started training with 3CW and stuff. So that was really cool. So you've jogged a memory there. What else we got anyway?
I'll send you this, don't worry. Alberto Del Rio's debut.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, because he'd only just been let go, and I was lucky enough. I did the backstage promo with him. Well, I was like, he was just there like Alberto, and he's just appears and that went out. Yeah, so it was that really was. I used to have when I did that first taping and I was doing backstage promos. For some reason, it became a bit of a sort of mini catchphrase for me, where I went, "That's a huge scoop. That's a huge scoop," and that was a huge scoop though when they had Alberto. What else we got?
Joseph Connors and Drew Galloway.
Joseph Connors. Where are you looking? How far down?
Have you got your phone on you? I can send you this.
I can see it. I'm not going that blind. Inadvertently. Comeback story. Oh, okay.
Which one are you looking at?
They remember it better than me. Next one. So Kurt Angle versus Cody Rhodes. Drew Galloway returns, cuts the promo of his life.
A few more there.
Yeah, a few more. There you go. There's Drew and Will Ospreay's on there. The Pro Wrestling World Cup. I don't know if you've seen all of that, Liam. That was ambitious, to say the least. You had brackets. You had tournament brackets for people from specific regions all over the world. It was so everyone's representing different countries and stuff, and it was nuts. But I remember Meltzer watched that one because I remember Meltzer raving about that one. But yeah, there's a lot, considering it was barely 3 years, wasn't it? It was barely 3 years, and there's a lot that went on, a hell of a lot, and lots of good memories. I loved meeting Jim Cornette though the first time because I'm such a big Cornette fan. But we barely spoke about wrestling at all. We were talking about Donald Trump because he hadn't got in power now, and we were just joking about all the silly things and like, look at this guy, he thinks he's gonna be the president, ha ha ha. And and after about 5 minutes of talking to Jim Cornette like that, I'm like, I'm convinced this guy is my best friend. And it was. And I remember the end of Refuse to Lose. So after the pay-per-view went off the air and everything, and it's like, all right, let's put over our very special announcers. And it was Alex Shane, and then I said, Jim Ross, and then Jim Cornette, and I said Cornette after Jim Ross, and Cornette thought that was the funniest thing ever because he got backstage. He went, "You put me over, JR," and he's like laughing his head. I went, I said he was, the greatest announcer of all time. I mean, what more do you want me to say? But you put me over him, and he was rubbing it into Jim, and JR's just there going, "Oh, come on, Jimmy," But it was that was awesome. That was a dream. But that was the event. Yeah, it was they built it up so well. And I remember when I was introducing the announcers coming out at the start, and it's Jim Ross and it's Jim Cornette, and the crowd just started chanting, I hope you're watching Vince McMahon. Because you've got to remember as well, in 2016, I think there'd been a lot of lapsed, or they turned into lapsed fans in terms of, the WWE fans. It was a bad period for them. Obviously, there was, still probably making more money than anybody. But I think in terms of creativity, I think it was a bad year, 2016. But so we came in at the right time.
I was just about to say, what was the obviously wrestling scene like when obviously What Culture like started?
I mean, the wrestling scene in this country, or just in general? Do you mean?
In UK mainly.
I think I mean, there was a lot of talent coming up for sure, and a lot of talent was on the radar and whatnot. But there was no, there was, like I said, there was zero platform like that. Nobody had a platform like that. You know, they still don't, really, if you think about it. I mean, there's a few companies that have got deals and whatnot, but there's nobody that's putting out a free show on YouTube, unless you want to correct me. I don't think.
Not in this country. I do know one, but it's not in this country.
No, there's a company I know over here that got a show on a streaming service. How many people watch that? I don't know. But it's not as accessible as what Culture was. Anybody could get What Culture at any time, and you clicked on, you got the pay-per-view. You know, there was a link for that, and it was just, you know, it was just wrestling done properly. And I know I've said that before, but it was in that respect, in terms of television and pay-per-view. You know, I'm not talking about the in-ring or creatively now. There's things I didn't like about What Culture that they did creatively that I could argue with, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that, you know, would agree. But they had a lot of great matches. They had a lot of great talent. The production, it looked great. These weren't big arenas, but the production still looks good. You know, we did a few of the O2s and stuff, and but it was national. We did, you know, we were doing Edinburgh, and we did London, and we did Leeds and Manchester and Liverpool, and, you know, it was based Newcastle, but they did all over. It was a very impressive operation, really, and it's just a shame. Too many factors going against it that prevented it from, you know, continuing after a certain point. But I don't regret it at all, and I'm glad people have still got good memories of it.
So, would you say that some companies have obviously learned things from What Culture? Could be good or bad.
I don't know, and it's a cop-out answer, but you would have to speak to them. All I can tell you is that there's a lot of wrestlers that speak to me and bring it up. That's all I can say, really, and just say that was cool. And there's a couple of fans. I will say this has never happened before or since. When they went over for WrestleMania weekend, and it was when, you know, people started taking entire promotions over to the US to be around WrestleMania and run their own events. When they did that, I had, I'm not going to say it was, you know, like 30 people or something, but I had, you know, quite a few people that messaged me, few on Facebook, that said, "Are you going to be there?" Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't make it, and I says, "And really, it's not a great idea to take a ring announcer if you're trying to cut corners, you know, on money. You can get a ring announcer over there. Not that I'm not putting myself over, but yeah, they should have took me. But they was like, it's a shame that you're not there. But I was aware of their viewership, that people were watching online. So I think that's something. There's something to be said for that.
Yeah, I'm just reading obviously through the World Cup tournament. It says something here about partnerships with Rev Pro New Japan.
Yeah, there was New Japan people on it as well. Yeah, there's lots of guys on it. You know, Lucha Libre a lot, and look, we had Rhea Phoenix and and Penta. They were there in What Culture a lot. Yeah, New Japan were involved, absolutely. Everybody was involved. If you look, and I don't if you've got a list of everybody that was in it.
I'm trying to find it.
I think there was about 100 people in the thing. It was very, very ambitious, very ambitious, and we knew it was only going to be a one-off. They would never try that again because.
Yeah. So I'm just looking obviously who the last champions are. Do you know what I mean? So let me just get cage match back up again because that's the go-to one at a minute. Bear with us.
It's all right.
I should have just left this on actually. I keep having to put what culture, but it keeps coming up Defiant. It's weird. So yeah, we've
Well,
got
it will
four.
be the last champions will be Defiant, won't they?
Yeah. Do you actually know who the actual last champions are for each title?
Yeah,
Just out of
it would have
curiosity.
been well, if you get that last card up, we'll look. But it would have been David Starr,
World
Joe
champion, yep.
Hendry. Joe Hendry won the internet title, right?
Correct.
From Kirby.
Tag teams really throwing me. I didn't expect this one.
Not 100%. It wasn't No Fun Police, was it?
No, it was Benji and Visage.
Benji and Visage, yeah. Did they beat No Fun Police? Were they in that?
The South Coast connection with the champions before them.
Ah, okay.
And
women's champion.
Have a guess.
Was it B?
It's not.
No, I know it was. It was Lizzie. It was Lizzie. Because Lana could never beat Lizzie. Yeah. I do remember that. That was in Manchester.
Yes, it was. I mean, there's only...
The heat was awesome for that.
I can believe it. I mean, there's some great women's champions. I mean, Kanji, Bea Priestley, Millie McKenzie, Kaylee Ray, Bea Priestley again, and somebody I'm not familiar with, Nixon Newell. Have I said that right?
Nixon Newell. Yeah, she's in. You know her. Do a search, Liam. She's just been released from WWE. What you like?
I see that many wrestlers. Sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, okay.
So there you go.
It was weird because when you click on her name, it doesn't actually say Tegan Knox. That's what threw me off.
No. Well, she wasn't then. Let's see.
Is there anything else you want to discuss, like what we've not discussed, Stevie, about What Culture?
I mean, another time I thought it was over was my infamous heel turn, which was a free event that went out. It was taped. And there was a bit of an internal struggle. Again, I don't want to dwell on that too much. But I was there, and it was just like, do you want to just turn heel and join Joe Hendry's heel group at the time, which was called the Prestige, and what was he called? The ring announcer. It's terrible, isn't it? I don't know the ring announcers. Devlin. Right. It was Devlin, wasn't it? I hit him in the head with a microphone, and I had a mask on, and I cost Martin Kirby the match against El Ligero. You can watch the footage is on YouTube anyway. And I get in the ring, and I'm like, "Here is your winner," and they know it's me, and I take the mask off, and yeah, you can watch that on YouTube. But it wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't planned, and people were annoyed, and we upset people. But we didn't care because we thought there was problems there. Not long after it became Defiant and things were straightened out. But yes, I turned heel, and it was never followed up on. Will Ospreay liked to go into business for himself in a way.
Okay.
He against plans from the company. I'll say, not me. Because he warned me in advance. We did an event in Manchester. We did a few in a row. That's quite interesting. Again, I would have to get up the names and stuff, but I think we did a tape. We did a pay-per-view. We did a taping, and then the next day we taped another event that was airing the month after. If you subscribe to their page or you bought their pay-per-view or something like that. I don't know specifics, but we taped another event. And Will came out at the end, and when we were in the gorilla position, he sort of said to me, he says, "Oh, bump me," and I'm like, "What?" just bump me. I'll owe you. I'll give you a receipt. And I'm like, when? What? I don't want to wrestle Will Ospreay. So anyway, I ended up bumping for Will. And then we did it on a taping when Jim Ross was commentating with Matt Striker. That was quite funny. Just to hear Jim Ross react to me, getting taken out by by Will Ospreay. And I remember Matt Striker saying to me afterwards, "Oh, it was good bump. Neck bumped it, didn't I? Because I'm daft." So it was just like a daft kick or something. And Will's so good. You know, I'm exposing the business now, Liam. Not really, but you know, it couldn't have. It's like getting hit by a feather. It was nothing. It was so good. Will is just for, you know, that's another aspect of the business the fans need to sort of respect more. The fact that, you know, if it looks amazing and I think people are getting, you know, really messed up, and they're not at all. You know, he didn't feel anything. He's so good, but he was adamant. He was like, "Oh, I'll give you a receipt. I'll give you a receipt." And then when I turned heel afterwards, he was like, "Oh, don't really want to do that now. If you're a heel, you know, I've beat you up already." And I don't know if Will will remember that, but yeah, there was at least 3 or 4 times that Will just took me out just randomly. But he did tell me before he was going to do it. But I don't know. The creative didn't know.
So, a couple more questions, mate, as we begin to wind down and stuff like that. How do you want What Culture to be remembered from your point of view?
How do I want it to be remembered?
Yeah.
Just the fact that, you know, they were trying to do something that nobody else was doing, and they were trying to provide an alternative for the fans. And there was such, and there always is online, I suppose. It just, you know, you're always going to get that sort of negative reaction, and people are going to be saying bad things, and oh, this won't last, and it didn't. But there was reasons. It wasn't just a case of they didn't know what they were doing. It was more of a case of YouTube screwed them over, you know, really. So you've got to. So I just want people to take that on board, and the fact that, you know, it was an alternative for a bit, and it was something that I from what the people I've spoken to about it, something that people really loved for a while and seen it as an alternative. And, you know, there was people who was really disillusioned with what WWE were doing at the time, that audience, but they tried something different and it worked for a while. And look at it, you know, it stands up, I think, you know, and in terms of production and whatnot, you know, even now people can't compete with that unless they've got that something behind them, and they had obviously What Culture as an entity itself beforehand. Good matches though, you know. I don't know what else was on that list. I'd Walter Gunther versus Will Ospreay as well was really good, and I know they've had a few, but that was very memorable. The clip that went viral when we did the pip.
I have actually sent it to your Facebook, by the way.
Oh, okay, I'll have a look in a bit. But the clip that went viral with Ricochet, where the rope snapped on the very first match of the pay-per-view that we did, I think at Milton Keynes, that one. And the ropes just went when they bounced off the ropes, and the ring just felt a bit on the very first match. And it's like, in a way, that was the best thing that could have happened, because that just went super viral.
Did he face Rey Mysterio by any chance?
No, that was Will Ospreay and Ricochet. Yeah, I've got the lists. I'm having a look now. Let's have a look. Yeah, I remember Kirby Mania. Yeah, I do remember that triple threat match: Cody versus Joe Hendry versus Gabriel Kidd. I mean, Cody's the real deal as well, you know. Yeah, people think it's all a facade and he's putting on an act and stuff. No, he's genuinely the nicest guy ever. He took me on one event we did. He took me and referee John Myers aside and just said, "Look, I just want you to know, I think you're doing a brilliant job, and I just want to say that now." And he's just a nice guy, Cody. He's so easy to talk to and everything. To see him succeed and stuff. It's amazing. He was a defense. Yeah, that was, I mentioned that match with the No Regrets Rumble 2017. Drew defended the title against 29 other men. War Machine versus Swords of Essex. Yeah, forgot about that. That was good. War Machine, obviously the War Raiders now.
Mm-hmm. Also, one of my favourite matches on that list as well.
Yeah.
Ospreay, Skrull, Kirby, Banks, and Dunn.
Yeah. It's good that you found that on Reddit though, and whoever that person is, you know, thanking What Culture and stuff. Yeah. People seem to know that. It's just someone's saying about why did it close, and someone's saying about YouTube demonetizing wrestling, and obviously the NXT UK thing.
Yeah, I think it was posted not too long after it closed as well. It's 6 years ago that got posted.
Yeah. I think, see, again, the Cultaholic guys, I know their involvement, they may have been a bit too involved at first, and I think that was one of the criticisms. I think it was all right to include them in little storylines here and there, but I know that you wanted to include them because to give the guys the rub, which again it seems like a very strange thing to say, but because of their audience and whatnot, they wanted to see those guys. So to give them the rub to other people, yeah, it was just a different way of doing things. So when they left, yeah, you kind of did lose that as well. But they weren't trying to be as involved anymore. I know. I think early on, I think the commentary team was Ross, wasn't it, and someone else, and after that, they brought in proper commentators because you know they were saying how people were saying how bad it was and stuff. But they were quick to adapt. It was just you know it was just a lot of fun to have a wrestling promotion that's running, you know, TV, and then pay-per-views. I just think, you know, and we just don't have that in the UK right now. Like I say, if someone wants to point out where I'm wrong here, there's minor organisations that are doing this, but when I say minor, you know, put the emphasis on that because they don't have the reach and they don't have the know-how to be able to do it. And I just wish that the people involved at Wall Culture would kind of, you know, behind the scenes producing wrestling because they just did it so well and they seemed to know what they were doing. Yeah.
One thing I like as well is how impactful it's helped the UK talent. Like I said, I mean, every wrestler I can think of went through What Culture at some point, and look at what they're doing to the careers. I mean, the two prime example is two of the biggest names in the UK right now, Nathan Cruz and Rampage Brown. I mean, there's so many.
Yeah, I mean, they turned up eventually, and you know, Rampage was there pretty much from the beginning, but Nathan Cruz, yeah, he was there. I was going to mention Rampage actually because I remember he was one of the first ones that he didn't know as well, you know, the background of What Culture and whatnot, and he went along and seen their offices in Newcastle, and I remember him coming away, and his reaction was like, "Wow, this is cool. These are the real deal. This is a professional company." So yeah, as I say, I know I keep saying it, but just that platform. I think it was the most important thing about it.
Absolutely, and stuff like that. It's incredible. I think most of the content is still on YouTube to watch, if I remember rightly.
I hope it is. I haven't watched it for a while. I'll be honest. You know, it's not the kind of thing I do. I don't go back and watch things that I've been involved with because you know I try to. I don't like watching myself for one thing, but yeah, if it's there, that's awesome. And there was so many good matches, good memories from just such a short period, and at least it's preserved. So that's cool as well.
Absolutely, Steve. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show and stuff like that. Any final
Yeah,
thoughts?
I just wish it was still here. I just wish there was something like that where it was being run like that. But it was something I'm glad I was involved with, and yeah, I'd do it again tomorrow, definitely. just going out live. It's just, I don't know how many people were watching, whether it was hundreds, whether it was thousands, whether it was, it was, the numbers were all over the place from what I understand, between the pay-per-view and between going out live. We did go out and live on YouTube one time. And I'm getting all kinds of messages, during the live event, and I'm like, this is cool. This is the way to do it. But it was, the production was so good as well. It was something to be a part of, and I became, closer to some people because of What Culture. Definitely Joe Hendry. I got to know him a lot better, through doing stuff in What Culture. And just to see, my old friends there as well. To see Benji do well as well. Nobody thought when he won the internet title and stuff, and he loved What Culture. I mean, you could ask him now. He should have came on today, really, because he absolutely loved it, and he still talks about the fact that that's where he pinned MJF, and he won't let that go. But yeah, it was just a lot of fun, and same with Dave Bradshaw and Jamie Kennedy doing the commentary, and seeing those guys, and driving the van with all the top talent. And that's where I first met Matt Riddle as well, and there's so many guys I could go through in that short span of time, and meeting Cornette, and seeing Bret Hart again, and I'd met Bret previously, but getting to announce, it's always good to announce major names like that, isn't it? I mean, how could you not? And being involved in some of the little silly angles and stuff like that. There was one again, I don't know how much the creative knew on it, and that clip's on YouTube as well, where Kirby made me do an Eric Cartman impression, which was quite amusing. Nobody knew what was happening. I was handed a note, and I knew he was going to hand me the note, but nobody else seemed to know, and I had to say that he'd left the building and do it in the style of Cartman, and just fun stuff like that. And backstage promos, a lot of those. I always love doing that kind of thing, filming that stuff, extra stuff. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm just wittering on, and these are just all memories, and it's all fuzzy and happy and stuff. But thank you if you were a fan, and if you still mention it today. Many of us have got good memories of What Culture, even though it was only 2 or 3 years.
Absolutely. Of course, Stevie, in Newcastle, we've got another show coming up, Wrestling in Newcastle. Settle the score. I'm going to be there. It's a solid card, let's be honest.
It is. It's packed. It's jacked. It's stacked. Whatever you want to call it. There's loads of matches. It's going to be a lot of fun. 21st of June, day before my birthday. Not happy about that, but no, I'm kidding. It'll be great. It'll be a lot of fun as always in Newcastle at the Forest Hall Social Club, and yeah, tickets on sale now. Yeah,
there's still some left.
There's still some left, I believe. Yeah, you got to be quick though. They're going quick.
Yeah, I can't wait for that main event, Brady and Henry.
Yeah, I mean, Brady Phillips has had the title for a long time. This match has been built up for a whole year. If you think about it, going back to when Brady Phillips turned on Alexander Henry, turned on Shreddy. Obviously, you've turned on Shreddy, you turn on Alexander Henry. Alexander Henry made his debut earlier in the night last year at Settle the Score, and
I was there for that one.
You were there for that. Alexander Henry came to over a year ago now, that one, but he came to Shreddy's aid, and yeah, we've been waiting for this match for over a year, really. So what's going to happen? Title on the line as well. So who knows?
Who knows? We'll put all the links in the description for that and stuff like that. This is solid promotion and stuff. We're doing some more watch-alongs. We've got another, obviously, match thingy on. Stevie, I'm going to let you have the final say on this. You can say what you want, and I'll hit the outro.
Thanks, everybody. Keep supporting Liam. Keep supporting the channel. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, hopefully I'll be back on again soon. And if I really like, I don't get many messages, but when I do, it's great, specifically about What Culture now, because obviously we're all these years later. But I'd love to hear from you if you were a What Culture pro wrestling fan, or even if you weren't and you've checked something out and you want to ask me about that. We can talk about that online. I don't mind. I welcome all messages. So keep supporting Liam, keep supporting the channel, and I'll see you soon.